Okay, so the class is being recorded, and my name is Dr. Sameh, and this is A230A. We're finishing off Candide. We started Candide the other day, and we're finishing it off. Just to remember, we normally take a work that represents a time period or an age. So what is it that Candide is representing? It is representing the 18th century. So in order to fully grasp and fully understand and subsequently appreciate Candide, we need to dig deep into the background and see what kind of ideas there were, what kind of ideologies, the um, the shape and the form of society at the time, and the beliefs and the morals and mores and everything in between. And this is what we exactly did when we spoke the other day, when we started speaking about Candide. So the 18th century is about reason, is about rationalization or rationalism, when people started to use their minds. Uh, the 18th century is also about this overriding feeling of happiness and satisfaction. People were so happy with the status quo. People were so optimistic even about the future. They believe that the future is bright and that progress is unstoppable, like they say. It will never end. This was all well and good until people like Voltaire and other philosophers came in and started to question this happiness. They started to challenge this feeling of overwhelming happiness and optimism. According to people like Voltaire, Voltaire, by the way, is the one who wrote Candide, of course, and he is a French philosopher. And Candide is a translated piece of work. It was originally written in French, of course. So back to Voltaire. Voltaire was a philosopher, and he was an empiricist. Empiricist, when I say an empirical philosopher, of course, I mean somebody who believes in what he sees and touches, not what he feels. So it's about sensory perception. When you see things, when you touch it, when you can lay your hands on, this is what you believe in. And this is what empirical philosophers like Voltaire believed in. So, as an empiricist, he started to look around and he saw things that he didn't like wars. He saw wars, he saw earthquakes, to tsunamis, and so all types of evil, whether this is man-made, which what we call moral evil, or natural evil, created by nature. When you have earthquakes, obviously human beings have no control over that. When you have disease, when you have pain, these are all things that are not inflicted by human beings, but we are on the receiving end of these things. So again, Voltaire was not happy about the idea that people are so happy and so optimistic about the trajectory that the future is taking, and he started to say no. Those who are happy, and the philosophers among them, they have to come up and tell us why they are happy, why they are promoting optimism when everything else is saying the opposite. When we see on the ground is obviously against and opposite to the idea of optimism. So people shouldn't be happy and optimistic if there is still disease in the world. People should not be happy and optimistic if there is still pain in the world. People shouldn't be optimistic and happy if we still have wars and if we still have tsunamis and all those kinds of. So instead of having debates with people in a direct way, he wrote Candide, this novella that we're talking about. And in this novella, he started to indirectly satirize. Satirize means to make fun of. He started to satirize and make fun of this optimism. And he started to prove it false and lay bare its false foundations. I mean, he said that perhaps the only way that lots of people that he can reach out to most people, because most people, if we talk about the masses, they don't know much. They are not educated enough to go and dig deep into books and discover the truth for themselves. So you normally have a work of art like a novel or a play where people enjoy it and they get entertained, and of course they think and start to take away lessons from it. This is what he intended to do. So the main polemic, the main idea in Candide is about this, is challenging and proving as false the idea that we live in the best of all possible worlds. According to him, this is not true. We don't live in the best of all possible worlds ولا حاجة. We may be living in perhaps the worst of all possible worlds, given the fact that there was the 7 years war. There were plagues and earthquakes. The Lisbon earthquake, for example, was claimed the lives of thousands of people. There was no religious tolerance of any kind. There was sectarian violence, of course, like I'm saying. Women were treated in the most dehumanizing of ways. So these are not all or in any way signs of um, that would make people happy and optimistic about the future. And in order to do that, like I said, he wrote Candide. And Candide is, among other things, is a travel narrative where you have the main character and the people with him are traveling from one country to another and from one continent to another. Obviously, the and ostensibly, the movement was meant to find his lady love. He had somebody that he was in love with, Kierkegaard, and she had to also leave and flee for her life because of the war that was happening in Germany at the time. So again, ostensibly he was after her. He wanted to find and locate her. That's why he moved on from one place to another. On another level, a more philosophical level, the travels from one country to another and from one continent to another was meant to check what happens in the world, and perhaps he and his colleagues can find um, a better place to live in. They were obviously pursuing and following or going after a utopia. They wanted to find a perfect place where there is no injustice, where there is a fair distribution of wealth, where there is a better treatment of women, where there is democracy and the rule of law, where there is this kind of peaceful rotation of power and all those kinds of values. So he moved from one country to another, pursuing those ideals. So when we talk about Candide, we're talking about two levels. We talk about a physical level where we have a physical journey moving from one country to another, ostensibly to follow and reach out to Kjonagund. And we have another more philosophical level, which is the philosophical journey that those characters embark on, asking all types of questions. And their point of departure is that uh, uh, this is the best world and these are the best circumstances that people can ever dream of. That's why they are overly optimistic. Again, when they move from one country to another and they see injustice here and there, they start to realize that obviously seeking a perfect world is an exercise in futility because there is no such thing as a perfect world. And perhaps in our Islamic traditions, this is very clear when we talk about the world and we say dunya. Dunya means we're talking about whatever is down, right? Dunya means that there is a place higher, which is obviously heaven and paradise, where obviously whatever happens in this dunya is not there, because we're talking about a perfect place in the heavens and paradise. So this is the basic contention: moving from one country to another, moving from one continent to another until he arrives in the Middle East, and until he arrives in Turkey or modern day Turkey. And I'm talking about Candide and his followers, where they meet an old man and they meet a dervish. The dervish, of course, typical of dervishes are people who are, they roam around, their clothes are in disarray, they are very poor, but they have wisdom. They can tell you, they can give you pieces of wisdom about the world and how it works, and the fact that you need to keep and live on the minimum. And then after he meets the dervish, he also meets, he travels to another city, or he travels out of town to the countryside where he meets the old man, and the old man is somebody who is tending his garden, who is taking care of his garden. And obviously, the message was that people should focus on their own garden. You cultivate your garden. You start off by uh, sitting and making your own bed. You don't talk about the problems of the world, and your house, yourself, or your flat, or your bedroom is messy. You haven't uh, kind of made your bed, and you're talking about fixing the world. So start by fixing your own bed and then fix the rest of the world. And this seems to be the message. We're not talking about beds here, we're talking about a farm. The old man is tending to his farm, and he does not think about the outside world. He doesn't concern himself with the corruption of the politicians back in the city. He lives a very simple life, tending his garden. So this seems to be perhaps the message at the end of the novella, that people should tend to their own gardens. People should focus on themselves. Fix yourself first before you talk about the world. And enough talk. Obviously, the two figures, whether we're talking about the dervish or the old man, they both have kind of antagonistic attitudes towards Pangloss, because Pangloss is a representation of the ideas of philosophers down through the ages. It seems that those two people are telling Bangladesh and the philosophies that he stands for to perhaps stop talking and adopt a practical attitude towards life. Adopt simplicity. It's not about theory anymore. It's not about big ideas. Give practicality and simple life a chance. This seems to be the message that Voltaire is perhaps settling with. Is that clear? Anan, can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Okay. Okay. So we spoke about Candide, and we said that Candide is the title, of course, and optimism is the subtitle. And again, if the subtitle is optimism, it can tell us a great deal about the trajectory that this piece of work is taking. It's about showing us, uh, optimistic people at work and perhaps challenging this optimism and proving it kind of groundless and unfounded. Again, we have two main characters. We have Candide, the character, and we have his tutor or teacher, Pangloss. Again, how does Voltaire talk about this idea of optimism? Obviously, he's an empiricist, like I said, and optimism is such a theoretical idea that does not have any, practical uh, foundation. It's not there on the ground because of the wars, and he's saying that people shouldn't be optimistic anymore. And in order to do that, he doesn't write a polemic in the newspaper. He doesn't write essays. What he does is that he creates a work, a narrative, a novella, in which he makes fun of those ideas and exposes them. This is what we call satire. And of course, because it's a work of art, not a polemic or an article in a newspaper, it is indirect. Again, we're talking about the 18th century, of course. When we spoke about Candide, we said that it was published in three different editions in three different cities, in Paris, in Geneva, and in Amsterdam. And the reason was that there were lots of ideas that people consider taboo. I mean, talking about religion and attacking religion, talking about current affairs and politics of the time. Obviously, this was very sensitive, and in order for the authorities not to go to him and say, listen, you are kind of crossing red lines, he had it, and they confiscate the book. He kind of published it in three different cities. Again, in order to further avoid um, the harassment of the authorities and their constant investigation and questions. I mean, he said that, and this is inscribed on the cover page, that he is taking Candide from the German of Dr. Ralph. He says that this is a translation and I'm not the author. Um, Again, when we talk about Candide, we talk about it as part of a long tradition of travel narrative that started off with people like Herodotus in the ancient Greek times, and started to develop down through the ages. We're talking about here, we're obviously talking about true narratives, not fictional narratives. And then the idea of journeys was also, kind of a characteristic of the 18th century. If we talk about the period from the 1680s to the 1790s, we're going to see lots of works that talk about those journeys, and those journeys were, like I said, were realistic journeys, journeys that actually happened, and they were part of this European uh, politics of expansion. Europe started to go beyond its boundaries, and we had countries like England moving all the way, England and I mean, yeah, France and Portugal and Spain going beyond there, going as far as Africa and Brazil and India. Again, you can also feel that there were uh, uh, influences on Voltaire. He was inspired by work and philosophical works of other people, whether those works were philosophical or even literary or even realistic, like Herodotus, like I said, in the 5th century. You have Pausanias in the 2nd century. You have Thomas More and his Utopia in 1516. And then you have contemporary influence, for example, Jonathan Swift in his Gulliver's Travels. So these are all works that are rooted in the idea of going on a journey. It starts off physical, but it becomes philosophical, addressing questions of freedom, equal rights, human rights, and stuff. Again, whenever people talk about Candide, they talk about it as, perhaps they ask the question whether it is utopian or dystopian. Utopian literature is about finding a perfect and ideal place where there is freedom of expression, equal distribution of wealth, you know, peaceful rotation of power, fair and good treatment of women. This is utopia. This utopia would be the opposite, where you have corruption and violence and ill treatment of women and abject poverty and injustice. So this is a question that we need to ask at the end of the novella, whether we are talking about utopia or a dystopia. Again, we said that Gulliver's Travels is one of the influences on Voltaire. Uh, Voltaire was also influenced by the English writer Samuel Johnson, who wrote Rasselas, or the history of Rasselas, Prince of Abyssinia, modern day Ethiopia, and it follows the same trajectory. We're talking about a prince who travels from one country to another, seeking peace, seeking liberty, seeking values, human values, and again, there is a great deal of talk about Candide and what genre it is. For some people, it is roman, in the French sense, which means a novel, but obviously it doesn't fulfill all the requirements of a roman. Some other people say that it is a fable or a parable where we're expecting a moral lesson at the end. Again, a third category are saying that it is a satire, and of course, satire is those writings that ridicule or mock the feelings of individuals, institutions, and whole societies. Again, what kind of satire? If it is a satire, it is an indirect satire, since Voltaire allows the readers to draw their own conclusions. Um, Again, we said that we have journeys, and you have the physical journey moving from one country to another and from one continent to another, ostensibly to look for Kyoningen, but you have um, parallel philosophical and intellectual journeys. And the idea, of course, when we talk about philosophical journeys, is to expose the philosophy of optimism and prove it as kind of not justified. Again, who represents this overriding philosophy of optimism? It is Pangloss, the tutor of Candide. Uh, uh, and I mean, he is obviously, uh, kind of promoting the idea that we live in the best of all possible world. The fact that uh, there was no effect without cause, and things cannot be other than as they are. For since everything is made to serve an end, everything is necessarily for the best of ends. So these are things that we're going to hear from time to time, and obviously Pangloss is representing that. Pangloss actually is representing the philosophy of the time, whose proponents and whose uh, kind of uh, propagators were people like Alexander Pope, the English poet, and Gottfried Leibniz, the intellectual philosopher. Again, like I said, the cover page says Candide or optimism, and it is stated very clearly that this is a translation for the German of Dr. Ralph. Again, we spoke about the title. We need to know also that there is going to be this clash between narrators. You have Dr. Ralph being the main narrator, and he seems to be naive, unreliable narrator. Uh, Again, we also have narrators who happen to be women, and of course, they tell us the story from their own perspective as women. So you will see a difference between what this unreliable narrator is saying, Dr. Ralph, and what Kionaghan and the old lady and the others are saying about the amount of misery that they have been experiencing. Again, this goes under the idea of irony or literary irony, because again, there is a great deal that we get to know through the use of a naive or a deluded hero or unreliable narrator, whose views of the world differ widely from the true circumstances recognized by the author or readers. Again, it's optimism that the whole novella is exposing. Um, Again, who represents this optimism and who is promoting it in the novella? It's Pangloss. And Pangloss is Candide's tutor and is the inexhaustible spokesman on behalf of optimism. Again, Pangloss is Voltaire's exaggerated comic creation. Again, he represents optimism and those who are promoting it. Again, optimism and commonsensically is going to be more common among the rich than among the poor, among men more than among women, among the healthy rather than the sick, among the slave owners rather than the slaves. Again, does it have any philosophical underpinnings? I'm talking about optimism. Of course, we have the work of Anthony Ashley Cooper, known as the Earl of Shaftesbury. In his philosophical dictionary, he talks about. I mean, he has absolute faith in the goodness of human being, even if they have self-interest. Um, and then Alexander Pope, the very famous English poet, who wrote Essay on Man. Well, it's a very long poem in which he lashes out against people who do not, kind of appreciate the wisdom of God and believe that something is wrong with the world. He tells them, no, it's not. It's only that you are limited and your understanding is limited because you're human beings, so you wouldn't be able to understand the wisdom of God. And if there is partial evil, you need to understand that this is part of a larger whole or a larger plan. And we also have the philosophy of Leibniz, and Leibniz was a philosopher and I mean, like an intellectual who gives kind of arguments, and it was all about establishing the fact that God is benevolent by uh, 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 being of course all powerful, all knowing, and all seeing. He admits that there may be nasty things in the world, but obviously this is not the this is only tiny if you compare it to the grand universal plan that God has in mind. Um, so according to him, only God with his serene overview sees how everything fit well and served a greater good. He started this argument by saying that since God is perfect by definition, it follows that he can do no wrong. Again, this was all read and said against a lot of miseries, a lot of catastrophes that was hitting and striking the world, like the 1755 Lisbon earthquake, which was followed by a tsunami. Again, there were also the 7 Years' War, uh, uh, and obviously people started to say this can't be the world that you are trying to tell us to be optimistic about. I mean, their faith started to be shaken. Um, Again, it's Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz that we spoke about as one of the proponents of optimism and the wisdom of God and his benevolence. Um, Again, what happened in Lisbon in 1755 and the miseries and the catastrophes and the loss of human life started to kind of uh, to get deep to started to ask questions about the wisdom and the benevolence of the universe and whether there is a caring hand governing it or not. So they started to ask those questions. Um, and the novel or the novella is one such an example. It shows us that people are starting to challenge the unfounded and unjustified optimism of philosophers like Gottfried and Alexander Pope and others. Again, it's all about people starting to say, no, you need to justify, you need to tell us why miseries are there, why there is pain in the world if we are in the hands of a benevolent God. Um, and then perhaps along those lines, and in order to prove uh, the fact that optimism has no place in a miserable and unjust world. I mean, we had the opportunity to hear uh, the female characters talk about experiences. So perhaps for the first time, we have female narrators telling us their own stories, and obviously, it's stories told from the perspective of the downtrodden and the victims. So, Dr. Ralph is not the only narrator in this tale. There are three episodes in the novel recounted by women. For example, in chapter 8, we have Candide's beloved Kionagund narrating. She retells the events of the opening chapters from her perspective. You also have chapters 11 and 12 narrated by the old woman who tells Kionagund the story of her life. And we also have the first part of chapter 24 narrated by Beckett, who this accuses Candide of his perception that she is happy by describing her decline from serving maid to prostitute. So they all give us uh, history from the point of view of its victims. So all three women tell tales of spectacular suffering and misadventure, which are nonetheless lightened by their transparent absurdities and extravagant hyperbole. We have, of course, Kiernan, one of the narrators, and what happened to her and how she would reduce to a mere plaything moving from one hand to another. So also it is suggested that during the course of her tribulations, Kionogund has sometimes been reduced to a sexual plaything. She tells us her story and how she had to kind of move from one place to another. She has to be brought from one person to another. And through these things, she portrays the injustices meted out. Again, what is also clear is that Voltaire is giving us what he portrays how minorities were on the receiving end of injustice. You have women as a minority, you have Protestants, you have intellectuals, and you have the Jews. So Tianagan concludes from her own awful experience that Bangladesh is utterly wrong. Again, you can almost tell how different Dr. Ralph's vision is from that of Kierkegaard. And then we have the old woman, another female, and how she was also treated in the worst of manners and how she was abused. Uh, and we also have another victim, which is the Dutch slave, who believes that he is more miserable than dogs. So the slave recounts his suffering from his mother selling him on the coast of Guinea to his Dutch master in Suriname, cutting off his right hand and left leg. So when the slave tells us about his story, he shows us how his African mother and his Dutch owner both benefited by his enslavement, and he declares himself to be 1,000 times more miserable than dogs, monkeys, and parrots. Obviously, these are all meant to contribute towards Candide's awakening. Every time he sees a sad or he hears a sad story, he would go on to Pangloss and tell him, yeah, explain this. Why do we have this suffering? Why do we have this injustice? So he thinks of what happened to the Dutch slave as an abomination. And then we have the journey to El Dorado, where we will have Candide and uh, his servant Cocambo traveling to South America, where they go to El Dorado, and El Dorado seems to be the perfect place that everybody looks for, where people don't care much about material things. They don't care about gold. Gold is spread on the ground, and nobody is taking any interest in it. So they are people who are free of material cupidity. Again, of course, for people coming from the old world where gold means everything, This was quite surprising. I mean, for Candide at Combo, to the extent that they couldn't stay for long because they are not used to this kind of simple life where gold means nothing. So they started to collect as much uh, gold as they possibly can, and they wanted to go back to their old world. Again, it seems that the message here is that it's not about whether the world is corrupt or not. It's about people who inhabit the world. So it seems that corruption is part of the DNA of human beings as represented by Kakambo and uh, Candide. They could have lived very happily in El Dorado, not caring about material things, but it seems that they are as greedy as the people that they are fleeing from. Again, the fact that they left El Dorado also is perhaps as a suggestion that there is no such thing as a perfect place. El Dorado is only in the imagination of those who created it. So that's why they would leave it because it never exists. Never exists because we don't have such a place where gold is not important, and there isn't such a place where people are not interested in gold and the amassment of gold. Again, were in their travels, they and in their search for ostensibly the utopia, they go all the way to the east, and it's modern day Turkey. And there, obviously, we're talking about a different ideology, and the ideology in the East, as inspired by Islam, according to Europeans, is that people in the East are fatalist. Fatalist means that they believe in fate and that everything is predestined. So if they have, dictators ruling over them, they leave them. They don't kind of question their authority, their dictatorship simply because this is predestined. This is something that God ordained, and obviously revolting against their rulers would be sinning against God. Again, these are things that Edward Said, the very famous Palestinian American scholar, has highlighted is in his Orientalism, a very famous piece of work. He talks about how the West perceives Muslims and the East in general and the Orient, and how they project on them whatever bad things they have. I mean, uh, they provide a very um, bad image of people in the East. They promote stereotypes about the East, and one of the ideas is that people are fatalistic or believe in destiny. That's why they don't do anything to change their lot. And then, like I said, we're now in in the east. We're now in Turkey, where Candide and Bangladesh and the others are going to meet the dervish. And in spite of the fact that the dervish is a very poor perhaps half mad individual. He is full of wisdom. He is quite detached from the world and advises Candide and his band to withdraw from the world too. He is obviously um, against what Pangloss says because obviously we are in front of two ideologies. Pangloss is full of talk about the world, about world philosophies, and while the Dervish is about this kind of philosophy that keeps everything simple. He believes in perhaps practical philosophy. That's why he tells Pangloss to keep your mouth shut. It seems that he is trying to say to Pangloss and all the philosophers before him to perhaps give practicality a chance, give simplicity a chance by stop creating philosophies. Because where did those philosophies take us? And I mean, we still have wars, we still have pain, we still have all those kinds of injustices. So it's very symbolic that the Dervish philosopher will slam the door in Pangloss's face, declaring, of course, that he doesn't uh, um, like his philosophy. And then we have the old man, and they went out of town to a farm where there was this old man, the owner of the farm. And again, this person expresses a detached attitude towards the machination of powerful people in the big city. And he says that he doesn't, he never inquires about what happens in Constantinople, the capital. And his message is very clear. People should retire to their own garden and tend it. So again, it's about starting with yourself. Fix yourself before you think of fixing the world. Again, he doesn't accept Pangloss's theories and philosophies. Uh, and he ends all the arguments by saying that we must cultivate our garden. Again, perhaps this is the conclusion that Voltaire arrived at. He believes that people should tend to their own garden. They shouldn't concern themselves with the problems of the world. If everyone starts to reform himself, we are likely to live in a better place. And this is exactly what the whole novella is about. Hello. So we're done with Candide. Do you have any questions?
No, doctor, thank you.
Is it clear, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Do you have any questions about, by now that you will have the Duchess of Malfi, Othello, and Candide as part of the MTA? Of course, you know that the MTA is divided into two parts. You have a short answer part and you have the long essay part. And let me make it clear that if we say short answers, it doesn't mean that you write a small paragraph. No, in the short answer part, I expect you to write half a page in each short answer. It can be a definition, it can be a concept. Okay. For the long essay part, at least 2 pages in the essay, at least. Okay. You can write more, but of course, you write sensibly. So your answers should be relevant, should be clear, and should be comprehensive. Comprehensive means that they should cover all the aspects of the question. That's why you need to invest the right amount of time reading the question. Okay, you have 2 long hours, and I think they are enough for you to think very carefully before you start answering. Okay, clear everyone?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Let's do something interesting. I leave you to study, and we can meet again if we need like a revision class. How about Thursday? Would Thursday be nice with you? But you promise me to by when we come to Thursday, you will have finished studying so that you can have questions. Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay, so we will meet on Thursday. Let's decide on a time. When is convenient for you? What time is convenient for you on Thursday?
I personally have no idea.
How about 2 o'clock, 2 p.m.?
Yes, it's good.
Okay, so we're meeting on Thursday at 2 p.m. for final revision before the when is the midterm?
It's on 3 November.
Which means that when we meet on Thursday, it's not going to be November 3rd yet, right? Let me see. No, when we meet on Thursday, it's going to be October 30th. Okay, so we still have time. Okay, right. On this note and with this item, we come to the end of today's class, and I'll see you, inshallah, on the 30th, which is next Thursday, inshallah, at 2 p.m. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.